Good afternoon, and I want to thank everyone for joining us for our Virtual Intercity webinar. It's a series over the next last Wednesday, and then the next 2 Wednesdays, including today. We're going to talk about 3 topics that, quite frankly, affect our communities and our region. And so with that, I need to introduce myself. My name is Bob Quick. I'm the president and CEO of Commerce Lexington. And I get to serve as the host of today's program. So I'm looking forward to it. And also we have 3 individuals who are known as experts in their field. And I don't have to say workforce is an issue that comes up all the time, especially today in the times we live following COVID. Which we're still trying to get out of. So workforce is a very big topic. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Last week, we talked about tourism, and we had 3 excellent presenters and 3 different focuses as far as how COVID has affected them and where we're going. And also today, as I said, we'll be focusing in on the workforce initiative. And then digital the next week. So the actual title for today is Innovative Method for Growing Our Talent Pipeline in an Equitable Manner. So with that, I am going to introduce our 3 presenters. I'll introduce them just before they present. And our first presenter is Molly Blankenship. She's the Vice President of Talent Initiatives at the Chatanooga Area Chamber of Commerce and the Executive Director of Chatanooga 2.0. I like that, Molly. That's very catchy. The Chatanooga 2.0 is a cradle to career partnership that Chatanooga has. In her role, Molly leads Chatanooga 2.0 in building cross-sector partnerships to ensure every child and youth in Chatanooga, Hamilton County receives a quality education and career opportunities that help them realize their full potential. She also oversees the Chamber's efforts to strengthen talent pipelines and ensure employers have a skilled, diverse local workforce. Before joining Chatanooga 2.0 in the Chamber, Blankenship worked as Community Advancement Manager for the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. We often call that in our industry ACCE, where she supported the successful launch of numerous collective impact efforts, work-based learning collaboratives, and college completion initiatives across the country. She was very effective at it, I will say. A Tennessee native, Molly studied public administration and social work at Middle Tennessee State University, excellent school. In her fleeting free time, is that between midnight and 6 a.m.? Molly enjoys reading, discovering swimming holes, that is pretty cool, and playing with her daughter, Margaret. Am I saying that right, Molly?
Margot.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I really goofed that one. Margot.
That T
A
is
first
tricky.
grader in Hamilton County Schools. So Molly, go ahead and present for us today.
Sure, happy to. Thank you, Bob, and thank you all for joining. Thank you to my friend Danny for shouting me out in the chat. I appreciate that. I need the confidence boost, so thank you. But really glad to see this partnership come together between our 3 communities and 3 organizations, and so glad to share a little bit about what we're doing. I thought that what I would do is that I will give folks an overview of some of the big buckets of work that we have cooking here in Chatanooga. And I decided not to do slides. I just wanted to keep it conversational. And so what I'm going to do is go through this overview and try really hard not to go down too far into the weeds so I don't overwhelm you, but give you an idea of some of what's going on, some of what the big strategies are that we're putting our weight behind in Chatanooga and Hamilton County, Tennessee. And then hopefully during the conversation portion, if there's any of those that are of interest, we can dive a little deeper. But I feel like I can't tell the story of workforce development. And Bob, by the way, anyone from Chattanooga can tell you that I got a tendency to be a little long-winded, so you're going to have to hook me at some point. Okay, but I can't talk about Chattanooga and our workforce development efforts without backing up a little bit and telling just a little bit of history and a little bit about what our community is like. Chattanooga, as many of you know, is a story of rebirth and renaissance, reinvention, a city that declined with old forms of industry and reinvented itself as an attractive place for business and for people. And a lot of our work over the past several decades has involved cross-sector and public-private partnership focused on that redevelopment and reimagining of place. And we've been largely successful in that effort and received national and international recognition for that work. And then the next phase of our efforts as a community really launched in 2015. As the next step to that reimagination of place, we came together across organizations and across sectors to solve problems and reimagine what the experiences and the opportunities for the people who call this community home should look like. And that gave rise to Chatanooga 2.0, which Bob, no one has ever called my title catchy, so that made me laugh. But Chatanooga 2.0 was launched in 2015 as a cross-sector partnership designed to understand what the challenges were that we were facing from birth to career, education, and workforce development in Chattanooga, and also bring partners together to collaboratively implement strategies that would help transform those outcomes and connect systems that were never meant to speak to one another, form partnerships that did not exist before, create a culture of shared accountability, and build capacity and infrastructure in the community for strong leaders to do the work that they know needs to be done in order to change their systems and fundamentally change the outcomes and drive greater equity and inclusion within our economy and our education system. So Chattanooga 2.0 was born, and really the rallying point for the launch of 2.0 was that we looked at data and saw that increasingly jobs that we were growing in our community were requiring post-secondary education. It's a national conversation. I know many of you are talking about this and grappling with this, probably all of you. But we saw that 80% of the jobs in our community over the next 10 years were going to require some form of post-secondary degree or education, whether it was a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, or some sort of certificate or industry recognized credential. And so we work now within Chattanooga 2.0, we work on long-term educational career, cradle to career transformation. And so we work in early childhood, where we work to expand access and quality of high quality early learning opportunities, early childhood services, and childcare. We work in K-12, where we try to improve the rates of third grade literacy because it is such an important indicator for long-term success. We work to increase participation in out-of-school time and wraparound services for students. We know that 80% of their time is spent outside of school. And so we work to align the nonprofit and the public sectors to the needs of students and talent in our community. We work to ensure that every student graduates from high school prepared for their next step in college and or career or military. And finally, work to increase the number of students who are successful in post-secondary and thus enter into our workforce in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, earning what we call a thriving wage, which is the wage one individual needs to not only survive in this community, but contribute back into the economy with extra spending and be able to save, etc. So that's really the focus of the 2.0 work, and I can dive deeper into that a little later on and what those strategies look like and what it looks like on the ground. But that is our collective impact effort, and we're working to align policy and practice in our community to reach goals at every point along that continuum that I just walked you through. That rallying point, though, in 2015 gave birth to the Chamber, who was an instrumental founder in Chattanooga 2.0, but gave birth to the Chamber thinking about how we could play a greater leadership role in the conversation about talent in our workforce development efforts as a community. Because as many as you know, as economic development has changed and modernized for recent years, talent has really become the currency of economic development. It is one leg and a essential leg in the stool to foster a growing and thriving economy. And we knew it was of critical importance and that our leadership was as well. And the other thing too that I think really got the Chamber moving in this space specifically is that, like early ed, the workforce ecosystem is crowded and convoluted. There is not a central entity like a school district that sits at the hub. There's lots of different players trying to bring value, lots of different employers trying to seek solutions for their needs. And so we saw an opportunity to step in and help coordinate that system. And that's the purpose that now drives the Chamber's work in education and workforce, is to make sure that employers have access to really high quality, robust, diverse local talent pipelines. And so I spend a majority of my time leading Chattanooga 2.0, but because of the strong connection point to workforce to the Chamber, I also oversee the Chamber's work in education and workforce development. And it's that later part of the pipeline, so the Chamber certainly is focused on all of them, but that later part of the pipeline, high school into post-secondary and into that workforce transition, that the chamber really is focused and trying to carry some of the weight around the Chattanooga 2.0 vision and move our community forward. We've had a number of community visioning efforts and community strategic planning efforts over the past year. Every employer that we speak to, talent is the primary challenge. And every individual, that's an exaggeration, but the vast majority of individuals who respond to surveys or engagement that we've done in the community say that access to high quality education, good jobs, economic inclusion, and economic mobility, those are the things that are next for our community that we've got to prioritize. That's really driven our work. Chattanooga is settled in Southeast Tennessee in Hamilton County. We are a geographically diverse community. We have mountainous regions, suburban, urban, rural, and we're also diverse in terms of race and ethnicity. Within the city center, or the city itself, over 30% of our residents are Black or African American. And we are also a city, like many across the country, who's grappling right now with really acute disparity when it comes to economic mobility, workforce participation, wealth building, et cetera. We have some of the wealthiest neighborhoods in our state located in this county. We also have neighborhoods where the average annual income is $12,000 a year. We have a high share of single earner households, folks without access to transportation, so on and so forth. And so the challenges are manifold. And what it has done is require us to really embed equity at the center of all of our talent related work and to prioritize both the short-term solutions to meet employers' needs today, but also think in the long term, really going back to that spirit of Chattanooga 2.0 about the long-term transformation that will ensure that we're not having the same conversation in 10 or 15 years. And that folks are not just prepared for the jobs of today, but that everyone has access to training and educational opportunities that unlock their full potential and prepare them for the jobs of tomorrow. At the Chamber, our talent efforts really fall into two primary verticals, diversity and equity being present in both of them. The first is talent development. And so there is a number of folks on our team who are waking up every day thinking about how we are creating pathways and local talent development training programs and coordination of that system so that folks who grew up and called Chattanooga home have access to high quality, high demand career pathways. They have an on-ramp to those pathways, and then there's a ladder that they can climb toward greater wealth and income there. And then the second vertical is around talent attraction and retention, making sure that Chattanooga and Hamilton County is a magnet for talent, and that we are certainly in the era of COVID, that we are on the radar of talent as they are moving and migrating across this country. And then also that we're retaining and developing the talent that we have, that we are a sticky city where folks have roots and where they feel a responsibility to continue to live and contribute to this economy and community overall. In talent development, we have, over the past several years, as I stepped into my role and looked at the workforce ecosystem here, recognized that there really is no one entity who could pull such a complex system together. But we have formed strong partnerships with our community college, with our employer community, with our school system, with our university system, and others to start to think about this coordinated system and what are the key strategies, key levers that we believe as a community have to be implemented in order for us to have a really effective talent development system in Chattanooga. And all of this has been impacted, obviously, by the past year spent in crisis. And a year ago, I really wasn't sure what conversation we'd be having about talent. I didn't know what the state of our labor force would be. But the reality is that COVID has only accelerated and exacerbated talent needs in our community. And in my view, has accelerated some of the trends around automation and digital skills, et cetera, that we knew were coming as a result, that we knew were already coming and that COVID accelerated. And so we have worked to identify what those key levers are. And really at the end of the day, for us, they boil down to job and career exposure, and then earn while you learn opportunities. During COVID, folks have been opting out of the workforce and out of college in ways that we didn't expect. And we believe that if you can offer someone a paid pathway to earn both experience and pay while they earn their education, then not only are they more likely to be able to pursue that path and leave whatever situation they are in, but then they are graduating from their educational program with both that credential and work experience, which is increasingly required by the economy. So we're really putting our weight behind youth apprenticeships, career-focused academies in our public school system called Future Ready Institutes, which I can talk more about later on. Short-term paid upskilling programs. We operate a program in this community called Skill Up, where participants are paid a training wage while they train for 40 hours a week for 6 weeks. They earn a nationally recognized credential and then are matched with employers and placed directly into employment at a living wage, and then tracked to see how they're retained, how they progress. And then finally, registered apprenticeships for folks who are no longer in the K-12 system and are ready to be on a pathway, high demand, high quality career, and they can earn while they learn and train for that program. So those are the levers on that side. And then finally, on talent attraction and retention, we recognize that there is a short-term need for talent. There's a shot in the arm opportunity, and that we have to be responsive to that. We also recognize there are opportunities provided by COVID around talent recruitment, as I mentioned a moment ago. And so we, in December of last year, launched the Chatanooga Calling Initiative. We're in the process now of launching an additional and supplemental marketing campaign for that effort. The Chatanooga Calling is a one-stop shop for talent that lives on the internet. It's a website, chattanoogaCalling.com. It not only serves as a job portal and as a portal to training opportunities for local talent, but is the hub where both employers and talent themselves can find the resources and information they need to understand the story of Chattanooga, what it means to live here and work here, and help them make that choice to ultimately do so. And the marketing campaign that we're rolling out over the coming months will be a nationwide marketing campaign focused on providing opportunities, providing talent across our country the opportunity to come and experience Chattanooga, incentivizing them to do so, and then creating an acquisition funnel that helps them ultimately choose Chattanooga as their place to live and work and play and raise their families. There's a whole host more that I could talk about, and I know that this has been sort of rapid fire, but my time is coming to a close. So Bob, I will hand it back to you. And then, as I said, I'm very happy to dive deeper into any of those topics that I touched. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you, and you may get the medal for being right on time for that 15 minutes to the second.
Awesome.
That is impressive, as was your presentation and the number of initiatives that you do and how you're trying to connect in what we call our new world in which we live. I'm going to hold a lot of the questions back. My thought was maybe we can, as we go forward, we get to the end of the 3 presentations, and then we can jump back in here. But I want all 3 of the presenters to be thinking about what keeps you awake at night. What about the role that you play in your community with your business community and chamber? What is that thing that one thing that maybe, or 2 or 3 things that keep you awake at night that you know you have to change to stay relevant? And I hate to use that word, but it's as true today as it was, and as many times we've used it in the past. So anyway, very good presentation, Molly. Let's hear from Daryl Smith. Daryl, obviously being from Lexington, is someone we know extremely well. We have worked for him. Daryl is, to me, in a career, I've been doing this for 34 years. He's one of those 1 in a million that you absolutely love to have. A hard worker, innovative, practical, can connect with anyone. He comes and presents today from not a staff standpoint, but from a volunteer leader and someone who's very involved in the issue of workforce. So let me just tell you a little bit about Daryl's background. He works in economic development and key accounts with LG&E and KU Energy. That's our big utility company here in Kentucky. He is based in Lexington. His primary duties include business recruitment and expansion, community development, project management, and account management. Daryl is a Lexington native, has 36 years of experience in sales, marketing, customer service, and community relations. He serves on a variety of community and economic development boards. I'm just going to touch on a couple. He's the immediate past chair of the Business and Education Network. That's a program we run through Commerce Lexington. And he's the current treasurer for the organization. He was selected as the Commerce Lexington Volunteer of the Year in 2007. and was selected as Commerce Lexington's public policy advocate in the year of 2015. He's a board member of the Lexington Industrial Authority. He's also a board member of the World Trade Center of Kentucky. And he graduated, he's a graduate of the Leadership Lexington and Leadership Central Kentucky programs, which have really connected a lot of people at the grassroots into leaders and leadership all across the region and in their communities. He previously served on the Bluegrass Workforce Investment Board, where he served as board chair. He is an energetic and insightful speaker and is recognized for having a passion for generating and facilitating the implementation of innovative ideas and strategies to help people, groups, and communities reach their full potential. So it's an honor, my friend, to turn the program over to you, Daryl, to present.
I appreciate that very much, Bob, and I hope everybody can hear me okay. It is a pleasure to be here, and as I looked, I am an International Economic Development Council member, so I know this is Economic Development Week and want to give a shout out to that effort and thank everybody that's out there for your role in bringing jobs and investment to your communities. As Bob indicated, I'm a volunteer, and we'll talk to you, and I love this term equity in this discussion today because the two initiatives that we will highlight both have an equity component to them. And as I begin today, I want to give you a bit of background on our institution. Going back in time, the Lexington Partnership for Workforce Investment was an independent 501c3 organization, but Lexington was an early adopter of the model to pull chamber and economic development together. But what it also did was bring together the workforce component and kept the workforce component as a separate 501c3 subsidiary or affiliate of the chamber to take advantage of certain investors who perhaps wanted to invest in something that had a charitable purpose. Like a lot of you, and I don't want to waste a lot of time on this slide, we want this globally skilled workforce, and we work with a variety of partners. You could have just as easily seen my friend Mark Manuel, who's the current chair of the Business and Education Network, vice president at Bluegrass Community and Technical College in this presentation today. But what we did in our infancy was try to bring together all the partners, the major players from the private sector, the University of Kentucky, all of our colleges and universities in the region, together in a collaborative effort to push workforce forward. And one of the initiatives I'm going to talk to you about is our academies. And it was great to hear previously this talk of academy schools and a career focus. Several years ago, our group maintained two different programs. One was a teacher institute where we pulled about 30 teachers per year out of the system. We got them integrated into the community, got them see what's going on in the business community, and had some interaction in the hopes that they would go back and make their schools a better place. Likewise, we had an entrepreneur leadership institute where we pulled a similar number of kids out of high school, immersed them in economic development and entrepreneurial type skills in hopes that those were the kinds of 21st century skills to take forward. Fast forward on that, we finally came to the conclusion we needed to have a bigger impact. So we took that from a field level to a systemic level and joint ventured with the Forward Next Generation Learning project, which we brought to Lexington, and were able to encourage 3 of our 6 high schools to become academies high schools. And I want to stop right there and say 2 things about leadership. One, it takes leadership and vision from the private sector and the community to make things get done, but it also takes that same leadership from the school system. And at that time, Manny Kalk was superintendent of schools. He's since unfortunately deceased. But he was a visionary who came in and fully embraced this system, and we were able to make a shift in how teaching and learning took place in our community. And I want to tell you a bit about our academies. Most of you are probably familiar with small learning communities. And I know we had some folks on our board who taught us this years ago, but we were able to implement small learning communities to allow our students to connect to real world problems and applications. And in a slide or 2 here, I'm going to show you a 2-minute video that demonstrates what our students are doing in Lexington. The kinds of educational experiences I like to mention that whether you're going to be getting a certificate go to a 4-year school, 2-year institution, or get a PhD, eventually you're going to make an impact in the private sector, in the market space. We want to prepare our students for that market space success. And that's what these academies do. They help unify our city. And it was amazing when this project took off. I know several of you may have been around in your areas for several years where we've had high unemployment, low unemployment, but it was fascinating that year to see the chair of Commerce Lexington get up and tout the fact that we were making a difference in the lives of our students by launching this program. And simply there you see the 3 transformative things we want to do. We want to radically transform education, and we want education to work for everybody. And I will mention here, when I was in school, they had what they called EBCE, experience-based career education, but you needed to have a car and the ability to get off campus to take advantage of some of these kinds of things. An academies program democratizes opportunity and makes it the standard in the culture that every student gets immersed with what's happening with latest cutting edge careers, and they have an opportunity to select, so quote unquote, their major within their institution and begin to hear and listen and learn based on what they may be 5 and 10 years down the road. So we believe long-term, this is going to enhance collegiate performance. It's going to make our students better prepared to enter the workplace, and it's going to make for a stronger Lexington. And at this stage, we're going to do this interesting thing always with presentations. We're going to show a video, which is about 2 minutes and 4 seconds long, and then we're going to go forward. And the funny thing, Bob Quick, I will say, I hope everybody notes that that young man apparently has a North Carolina Tar Heel sweaty hoodie on there, right in bluegrass and wildcat country. So that shows how we love everybody and welcome everybody to our community.
In 2017, our community came together to build and launch the Academies of Lexington, a movement to transform public high school education and provide all students with an educational experience as innovative, immersive, and engaging as the world around them. A movement to increase the talent pipeline and strengthen economic development in our city. A year has passed, and this is the hard work that went into it. We launched our brand, we successfully implemented the new academy model in 3 high schools. We hosted Mission Exploration, a career fair that gave freshmen a chance to explore in-demand careers and industry options earlier than ever before. To celebrate, we held an official launch event for the community. We started a conversation on social media, and the community responded. Nearly 3,000 students began their journey to graduate more prepared for college, career, and life. We are creating a new generation of leaders, problem solvers, collaborators, lifelong learners, effective communicators, and creative thinkers, equipped to succeed in the 21st century workforce, equipped to work for you. Our mission is clear, but we can't do it without you. We need your support. Why? Because in order to create community prosperity tomorrow, we must invest in our students today. And the most successful communities come together to prepare and support the next generation. We're all in. Are you in?
I think I have successfully moved that to the next slide. That's always one of my fun things in presenting. I had this happen to me once before where I got caught in a loop and I never could get that slide to end off the video. But that's a fascinating thing we're doing with our young people. And currently we have over 4,000 students enrolled in that program. We're excited about it. And one very early thing we learned One high school in Lexington had more discipline problems than some of our other high schools, and we noted and were thrilled when we visited that school to see the young people dressed up, hosting us, and the whole difference in the environment that school has based on this academy's type of a model. So that's one thing we talked about. We want to influence the future prepared workforce in Lexington. The second exciting thing we want to talk to you about briefly today, what can we do about today's individuals? What about the adults in our marketplace? And secondly, how can we influence the decisions our young people take? In March of 2020, we hired IQS out of Louisville to do some studies for us. We talked to a lot of folks who had to work, live and play type portals in their communities and started campaigns. And the best advice we learned was to go do your own baseline research, see what your particular economy looks like. In Louisville, for example, we found out they wanted to recruit folks in for specialized careers. Would that be the thing that we needed in Lexington? We needed to do some baseline research to figure that out. So we've been engaged in 2 rounds of research that I will talk to you about briefly to get the kind of data to influence where we go from here. And 2 objectives of that is we want to look at that pipeline, as I indicated, where are those growing sectors in our community? And secondly, what are the occupational needs of our current residents? We looked at some data, and it's interesting to hear what Chatanooga said. We knew it going in, but we're a very educated community among certain segments of our community, with 38.2% of our residents holding a bachelor's degree or higher, which is high nationally and much higher than the rest of our state. But look at the second part of my slide there. The available jobs do not align to the skill sets of the folks. So what we're finding is we have an educated community, but we don't have the jobs for that community to fully take advantage of the academic backgrounds that they have. Secondly, we're so blessed here as a region to have these 25,000 or so graduates every year. My daughter will be one of them this year from Center College in Danville. We have all this talent, but we don't have the ability to lure them here with available jobs. So that's something that we want to work on. How can we keep the best and brightest of our students here? And of course, we recognize students, this is a global world. Students like my daughter have experienced it, and they want to travel the world. But for this region to be prosperous and for your regions to be prosperous, what strategies can you implement to keep the best and brightest within your communities? Second phase of our research, which is ongoing, and we will meet actually this Friday to discuss, we've done some interviews with employers, with young professionals, and we've oversampled a group of African-American young professionals to see the perceptions. Do they think they can have long-term careers here? Can they grow here? Do they have to go someplace else before they can engage fully to satisfy what's inside of them? What do they think about our region? This is going to directly influence and take us to a much higher level, because it's going to begin to uncover some things that have been there forever, but it's taken moments in history like we've experienced in the last year to bring them to fruition. Of course, it wouldn't surprise anybody on this video to understand that there are disparities in terms of income between different races, and even when you control that for similar backgrounds, number of hours worked, and degrees, there are still some issues there. So diversity and inclusion are some huge things that we'll need to work on going forward. But it's interesting, as I wrap this up, to put a bow around it, we're taking our work from, yeah, let's show up at a business meeting and second minutes and motions, to how can we take the talent that we bring traditionally on these boards and to begin to engage in discussions about where can we take our communities? Can we create the safe space and have the honest, hard conversations to pull everybody up and create additional prosperity in our regions? Thank you very much. And Bob, I want to turn things back over to you.
Thank you very much, Daryl. Very enlightening, good program, and great ideas. And we're going to bring at least our presentations here together with our third presenter. And she is from Asheville, and April Brown. Shneima had a chance to talk with her a little bit here before we got started, and very enlightening, doing a lot of incredible things there in Asheville. So let me introduce April to you. She's the Director of Industry and Recruitment and Expansion for the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Coalition, Asheville, Buncombe County. April's dedicated to building community by securing quality jobs and investment in our region to improve economic security and provide healthier outcomes for local families. April cultivates engaged relationships with local business leaders in order to facilitate and encourage growth, understand needs, concerns, and aspirations of their business, and connect employers to talent and to training. Additionally, April works to recruit well-aligned new businesses to the Asheville area in accordance with the ABL 5x5 Economic Development Strategy, which targets creation of new high-paying jobs in advanced manufacturing, healthcare, science, and technology. So it's my honor to introduce April. April, take it away.
Thank you, Bob. It's great to be with you all, and thank you for that introduction. When I came onto the team here in 2019, I certainly inherited a few existing programs and initiatives, but because I was new, I spent a lot of time listening. And because workforce development was somewhat of a new profession for me, I was listening with fresh ears and listening as an outsider, so to speak. So the role I came into actually 3 years ago was actually workforce development and existing industry. And I'll share more, but we're recently kind of shifting things around, and we're developing a team specifically focused on workforce development. And then I'm assuming the role of existing industry and recruitment, as Bob said. So, but when I was in that role, I was, working to develop relationships with local industry, hearing from them, their needs and their challenges. And of course, most of what we heard was workforce and workforce development. So I was able to bridge those conversations between local industry and local workforce development agencies. And as Molly said, I think she hit the nail on the head. It's a very convoluted and busy space that is just very difficult for anyone, let alone someone running a very large manufacturing facility or hospitality business, to figure out how to tap into those resources. So that's a really, really important role that we play at the Chamber. And in our case, we have the Economic Development Coalition as a public-private partnership at the Chamber. So we're Chamber staff, but we work on the economic development team. And so I guess what I'm going to do today is share just a couple of the initiatives and that we've been developing as a result of listening to those needs and challenges. Like most metros, on one side, we have a lot of open, unfilled positions, similar to what Daryl was just talking about. There's a mismatch in the people that are moving to Asheville and the skills and talents they have versus the skills and talents needed in those open, unfilled positions. On the other side, we also have this very widespread perception in Asheville that it's a bring your own job community. And that, is probably similar to what Daryl was just talking about. But, it's, a lot of people have the perception that you have to have a PhD to get a job as a barista, for example. So our challenge is in finding those untapped pools of underemployed or dislocated workers and bridge them and connect them to high wage, high demand opportunities. So I will share a couple of the initiatives that we are doing, that we are currently working on to do that. So the first thing, before I dive into that, I wanted to set some context. We did this survey that was that we call the State of the Workforce Survey, and it was actually in partnership with the NC Chamber, so the State Chamber, as well as some other agencies and partners. Ultimately, really, really briefly, there were about 10 industries in 10 counties. All industries are growing. They're all adding jobs, up to over 26,000 jobs in the next 3 years, which that was in 2018. All industries have a difficulty in finding talent with very similar essential skills: responsibility and self-discipline, taking initiative, professionalism, critical thinking. We hear this a lot. But the other interesting thing is that over 70% of the respondents said that they rely on networks as their primary source for talent. So that begs the question, what does that mean for disconnected job seekers? So there is an issue for us of access, and as the convener and as the connector in the region, we see it as our role to meet this need. You know, our mission as the chamber is building business through, building community through business. And we see that as our role to meet this need so that business and community can thrive. So one of the first initiatives that I've had the enormous pleasure of launching and developing and implementing, that I'm also handing off to my colleagues and that this year, is what we call Next AVL. And AVL is our airport code, and it's a mentorship program that seeks to bridge the gap between college students and professionals in the Asheville area. So with the help of our partners at several, now five local universities and colleges, we host a new cohort of college students and mentors every fall, and it runs through the academic year. So there is an application process, and we're committed to the success of Next AVL because we know, as you all know, in the real working professional world, economic opportunity and mobility is less about who you know and much more about who knows you. We need people to vouch for us. We need people to make connections warm so that we're not cold calling, so that we're not a random resume in the stack of 100 resumes. And so as we reflected on our role to grow and find talent, we knew this opportunity would have to, build and cultivate meaningful and lasting relationships. The big idea being that if a student develops those connections and networks in the area before they graduate, they will be able to leverage those relationships and are more likely to find their first job here in Asheville. It's a very similar challenge that many people have and especially our community. It's a small community. We have a lot of small businesses in our community. We don't have a ton of corporate opportunities. So we really need to cultivate those connections so that we don't lose the folks that are here for college and then graduate because they don't see an opportunity for themselves. The ideal candidates are they're sophomores and juniors in college. For the students, they're first in family. They're students with a strong work ethic who just need additional connections or support. Students from under-resourced communities. There's a wide range of career interests, as you can imagine, and we match them with professionals in their field of interest. And then the ideal mentor is a seasoned professional who agrees and commits to extending their network to that student. So for both the mentee and the mentor, there's about a 6 to 8 hour commitment. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but so we spend a lot of time in the sort of recruitment process, making sure they understand kind of what it is. It's not an internship, it's not a job, but it's maybe a little hard to kind of wrap your head around when you've never had a formal mentor, but it's super valuable. We also provide this structured curriculum of monthly networking meetings, which include professional development presentations, as well as an opportunity for the cohort to get to know each other. But most importantly, the mentor and the mentee spend time with each other on their own time to develop and launch and cultivate that relationship. The stories are just fantastic. The mentors get so much out of it that, most professionals don't expect, it kind of seems like, oh, it's a pay it forward, or, I'm going to give back. But every mentor that we've talked to, and we do a lot of interviews and testimonials, they get way more out of it than that. They a lot of the mentors, are seasoned professionals. We start to feel like, I don't really know what I have to give or what I have to offer. And this kind of an opportunity roots them in the community, but it roots them in what they have to give, and it's energizing, and they see the profession through the fresh eyes of the students. So it's, as you can imagine, super valuable for the students, but equally valuable for the mentors. And then as a result of the mentorship, the students have a clear vision of their career aspiration and goals. They are much more confident in talking about themselves and their professional aspirations. They identify, a handful of employers in the Asheville area within their field of interest. And then they also have professional contacts in those fields that can help them navigate and transition. So, of course, we cover topics like skills and values assessment, resume interview skills. We ask that part of the curriculum, the mentors link the students up with different people in the field to do informational interviews and job shadows. And then we coach the students through developing a pitch. And then the last event that we have is the students, not every student, but a handful of the students pitching themselves in a public event where we invite our chamber network and our community to witness and observe the experiences students have had. And of course, we give them a professional headshot, as you can see here. So since 2018, about over 50 students have, what I would say, graduated from the program. A lot more have started. There's a pretty serious attrition rate, especially considering last year COVID was a hard year for students. But most of the students, over 95% probably, would recommend Next ABL to their friends. Same with the mentors, they would recommend it. And most importantly, the students see the professional fields in Asheville that they had no idea existed. And most of them, over 70%, actually claim, you know what, I actually will stay in Asheville, more likely to stay in Asheville. It's not a requirement. We're not saying they have to. We're not making them, sign their name in blood. But the idea is that through that exposure, just as Molly said, through that career exposure, more linkages and more roots are cultivated. So that's Next ABL. And then another initiative I'd like to highlight is this new one that we launched just last year. And it's a model of collaboration and workforce development initiative that we're calling Inclusive Hiring Partners. And the way we describe this is it's a resource to close the opportunity gap for Buncombe County residents. And this is a beast. I will tell you, it is a beast. But the idea came from, we know that Buncombe County has experienced a lot of growth, has experienced a lot of prosperity, but not everyone in our community is experiencing or enjoying the benefits of that growth. And like a lot of areas across the country, we're facing big economic challenges. Many employers saying they're having a hard time filling those jobs. But over the course of conversations, especially with community partners and agencies and community service providers, we've learned that the chamber can play a much bigger role in connecting service providers, peer support specialists, case managers to employers. And so we actually submitted a grant to Golden Leaf Foundation, which is an organization here in North Carolina. And we were awarded this Opportunities for Work grant, which is specifically awarded to projects that are working to connect individuals experiencing significant barriers to employment to high wage, high demand employment opportunities. This is why I'm calling it a beast. We have community partners that we rely on to refer the individuals into the talent pool. And, we have over 20 community partners. Our list of, the organizations is one thing, but then as you can imagine, case managers and peer support specialists that work for those organizations, it's a huge list of people that we're working to keep up to date with all of the details and the changes and the updates and the needs and that sort of thing. But it's such a point of pride for us and our team that we have such strong relationships with community partners and service providers who are working day in and day out to solve these challenges: poverty, previously incarcerated individuals working to get into jobs, lots of various barriers. They work great on relieving those barriers. One of the things we heard from them, we don't have any relationships with employers. We don't know how to get these people into those jobs. So the other side of the initiative is developing partnerships with employers. And we do ask that these employers are active partners. We're not just, referral to their jobs. We're asking them to be actively involved in the development and the improvement of this initiative. So currently we have 20 employers in 3 key industries: manufacturing, healthcare, construction, as well as 2 of our government employers, the city of Asheville and Buncombe County. And they, all of these employers are looking to fill. Just last week, we do a jobs board every week, over 180 jobs just with this number, just with these employers that they're looking to fill. So there is no fee for employers to participate, but as a partnership, we ask them to commit to several few key responsibilities. And I know I'm running out of time, so I won't be able to go into everything, but ultimately we're asking the employers to make a commitment to do their own diversity, equity, and training of their staff, that they evaluate their hiring practices, and that they are committed to addressing any cultural clashes that may exist, so that their workforce or workplace is a supportive place for people from different backgrounds. So this is our first year. Our pilot, we had hoped to start with 10 people. We have 27 people currently enrolled. We continue to, it's an open enrollment. Our goals are to serve 384 individuals over 3 years. And so we're getting ready to launch our sort of public outreach campaign, which I think will really kick us into gear. So far to date, 37% of the individuals that are enrolled have been placed into employment, beating our goal of 30%. Ideally, that will be closer to 75% placement rate. So hoping to see that improve. And like I said, we've got over 20. Our goal was to have 10 employers in the program. It's been hugely popular with employers. They're leaning into this. Most employers that are reaching out to us and asking to learn more about it, most of them decide to enroll. And like I said, over 180 jobs. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention on the horizon. Like I said, we now have kind of workforce development, workforce partnership as its own functional pillar, led by Tiara Wilkie and Samantha Cole, and super excited to see that kind of getting its own, double full-time focus. The State of the Workforce Survey that I mentioned, we are doing that on every 3 years. So we will be doing that again this fall. Very, very curious and intrigued to see what those results will look like. And then finally, I wanted to mention that we're working to launch a high school talent development initiative here in the region with a partner in Raleigh. That's a nonprofit organization, startup organization, working to basically to build a model of diverse, equitable, and inclusive talent development. And this is an innovative learning model that prepares high school students for the unique human job description of the future, which is to work in diverse teams to solve complex problems. So even as jobs become automated, there will still be this unique need that we need humans to do this unique job description. So working to kind of get high school students out of the books, out of the classroom, and really launching them on a team, a coached team to solve problems for local businesses. And with that, I'll pass it over to Bob. Thank you so much.
April, great job. Very, very interesting programs. And I think all 3 of our presenters spoke on about unique programs that fit their communities, but could fit in most places. I mentioned to April when I first got on, we spent a lot of time driving through and every now and then stopping in Asheville. years ago when my son was at a music camp for orchestra in Brevard. I couldn't think of the place. So
Oh, good. Yeah, Brevard. Lovely, lovely city. Yeah.
incredible place, as is both Asheville and Chattanooga and Lexington. So we do have a question here. Let's go into the Q&A here for a little bit. We did have a question for Molly. Can she talk more about the upskilling effort? Do they target specific sectors of jobs that employers are having trouble filling in, like computer science, manufacturing, healthcare, logistics? And then who makes those decisions?
Sure. Excuse me. Sure, happy to. A lot of our efforts started with a really comprehensive research and discovery process. So we worked with Avalanche Consulting to write our strategic plan, but as a part of that, did talent development analyses, economic development analysis, etc. And as a result, had talent pipeline data per industry and per occupation to understand exactly what our gap was, what our projected need was, and how many we were producing. And so we use that as fodder for conversation with both employers and educational institutions about how we would start to solve and close those gaps, and hopefully move them to a surplus and increase our economic development competitive advantage. And then through the Skill Up program, which I think is probably the program that's being referenced, that program that's a short-term paid training program. We started with manufacturing because the model was actually originally piloted in Indiana in that industry. We knew that there was a tremendous manufacturing need here. We spoke with employers at the forefront and then made that decision. But we've now begun to move into the IT space, because when we did that initial data gathering, and as we continue to talk to employers, we saw that IT is one of our, where we have some of the greatest opportunity from a talent development standpoint. So we're now trying to understand where the front door is essentially to the career ladder in the IT sector, and build curriculum that we could incorporate into Skill Up that folks would then use to break into the IT sector and climb from there. We've been looking at some Google products, Google curriculum, and some other things as well. But across all of our efforts, including that one, we try to make those decisions. Those decisions are employer driven. So whether it's through surveying, committees, outreach and engagement, we have a couple different methods that we use. We're constantly trying to seek guidance and information from them on what they want to see, and that's the starting block.
Very good. So I tipped everybody off. I was going to ask this question, and I like to ask this question no matter what the issue or the area I'm in. But what keeps you awake at night? What is it that in your particular communities that you struggle with the most, or that you see as being your most challenging issue? What is that? And then, I heard a lot of different programs and initiatives being mentioned, and staff resources are always critical, and volunteers carry those things out. But a lot of times there's just a lot of limitations. But there's typically in every community 1 or 2 or 3 things that people say are kind of the Achilles heel that we've got to overcome. What would those be? And Daryl, let's start with you, since Molly just asked a question, or just answer.
Thanks for the first attempt to answer a tough question, Bob, but I'll answer it this way. What keeps me up at night, being an economic developer, I'm thrilled to be in on calls with new projects and understanding that workforce is that key issue. And we have a lot of work to do there. But on the other hand, and this is just a personal comment from me, we seem to be at an impasse in our nation, in our civic arenas. We can't talk and get along with each other anymore. So while we've got great challenges and a need to work on some great things, we seem to be disintegrating. And I think the beauty of what I've seen in Lexington, however, are the courageous conversations that I've seen you and this chamber have with the African-American clergy. I've seen the great steps that Mayor Linda Gordon has taken with seeing the disproportionate impact that minority businesses in particular had through the pandemic, and the social unrest and the targeting she did there, and the funds that flew through our minority affairs office here at Commerce Lexington. That's been tremendous. And thirdly, the tremendous way we're working together now. I want everybody to understand, I've been at this a long time. I used to be a workforce board chair, and we ran this independent system over here, which was totally different than the chamber. It's been tremendously gratifying to me recently anytime we're doing our virtual calls with existing industry, we've got a team of folks from the university, from the workforce system, from the community college technical system, all online, listening to the needs of plant managers and figuring out how we can respond. So although, Bob, I'm up late at night thinking about this impasse and this politicalization of our country and this disintegration and the challenge of the job situation, I'm thrilled to be engaged in efforts like this, where we're coming together as a civic family and trying to figure out a path forward and having great conversations on how to do it.
Very good. And let me just add, for me, it's a real honor to work with Kit Kramer on this whole digital initiative, Krista Gillenwater, because I would say what Daryl just said, in Asheville and in Chattanooga, you're doing the same thing. You are working together, you're pulling people together, you're not letting folks that can be difficult. We all have those, slow you down or stop you. And I know that through working with them. All three of our chambers are nation's #1 top chambers in a given year here recently. And that's not an accident. I mean, that is something that happens with a lot of hard work and quite frankly, having great volunteers, but having a very smart, good staff. And so anyway, I just ad-libbed in there a little bit to take off on what Daryl said, but April, what would, in your mind, what's that thing that kind of keeps you awake at night as far as a very, a severe issue that you think could, to divide or not, help you advance as a community?
Quite honestly, and with a little vulnerability, if you don't mind, the thing that keeps me up at night is kind of our relevance in a global economy. The young people are more and more diverse. They're more and more demanding. What they expect in a workplace is totally understandable and realistic, but it's continuing, I think, to put pressure on employers. And frankly, at this point, we are losing our Black residents in the community, and we're not attracting, kind of like what I liked Molly's terminology, that she's got a sticky community and 30% Black residents. That totally pales in comparison to ours. And I think that that's a real threat for us, because as the future generations continue to be diverse, we need them to want to live in Asheville. On top of that, gentrification and affordability is a real challenge right now. And so people just choosing not to go to college or graduating college can't afford to live in the city, in the county at this point. And that's, again, just pushing those younger generations or those entry-level workers out. So those are huge issues, and can't be solved by one person. I'm proud to work at a chamber led by Kit that is doing everything we can to collaborate and form partnerships and relationships to attack these huge issues together collaboratively.
And every time we ask this question, regardless of what the topic is, what always comes out is what you just said. And I'm glad you're being vulnerable and you're being honest. That's what it's all about, is we can't hide behind and try to avoid those things that divide us, separate us, or keep us holding us back. But what you often find is that it's not just one thing. It's all those things that your Chamber of Commerce is doing. It's all those things that your community is doing. And I know, Molly, from having worked with you previously at ACCE and knowing, again, what you're doing there in Chattanooga, you run into some of the same things. But again, let me kind of go back and from your vantage point, what keeps you awake at night in relation to the topic and to advancing Chattanooga?
Sure. And Bob, when you were talking about the obstacles that we think we face, is that a part of this question, or is that
Absolutely.
Or is that teeing up? Okay. All right,
Yeah,
good.
That's a great teeing up.
All right, perfect. Well, I think that my comments could probably be summarized as I agree with Daryl and April. And I think that that's really important, and probably why some of this vulnerability is okay, is that the reality is that every community is grappling with this. And I think that a lot of us feel isolated in that cause and in that problem solving, but I really do think that it's a widely felt challenge, as we can see at a national level. And so to answer your question, Bob, I think what keeps me up at night is just like Daryl said, and like I was just referencing, local communities are a microcosm of what's happening at a national level. And so politicization and an impasse and fragmentation, that sort of thing, we feel the effects of that at a local level. And thinking about how you start to overcome that and what jurisdiction and ability you have to overcome that at a local level is a challenging problem for leaders to face, I think. So figuring out how you grapple with that, and even, you know, in Chattanooga is a community with a really rich history of partnership and collaboration where we do know how to work together. And I think that we're ahead of the game in a lot of ways in that space, but even still have far to go. And so that keeps me up at night, thinking about how you shift a narrative in a community. I think a lot of the work around education specifically, and especially when you're talking about it through a lens of equity, is going to change, it's going to require changing minds, educating and level setting and getting on the same page with the rest of your community, which is really challenging work. The big obstacles that I think we face as we move forward is we've got to solve the issues that we're at least alluding to right now, issues of inequality and racial inequality especially. And to what April said, it's important to point out that we have a diverse city that's surrounded by a less diverse county. And within that city, just like every other city I know across the country, there are massive disparities in terms of income and wealth. And so we've got to make sure that every member of our community is thriving and has the opportunity to. And I think that that will be essential to our growth and progress as a community. And then finally, the last thing I would say is I think as chambers specifically, we've got to think not only about what we can do, and like the programmatic examples that we've shared today, I think are really stellar. But I think thinking about how we influence the rest of the community to come into alignment and really think about this systemically and how to solve it in the long term, I think that that's going to be an important hurdle to cross as well.
We found three of the best folks. I think this is exceptional. So one of the limitations we always have are resources. You know, I've said, you know, I've heard you all talk about your volunteer base. You talked about dollars, grants, your foundation. But if you didn't have those limitations in the field in which you work, what would you do differently than you're doing today? Money's not an issue. Resources of any kind are not an issue. And let's start with April.
I would pay more people to work on the team to solve this problem. I think we need like many more minds at many different levels, at the community level, at the corporate level, paid to work at the various capacities to advance the solutions.
Okay. Daryl?
I think I would tend to agree with what April said. I've been reading quite a bit, some work that Ed Morrison and others have done in terms of strategic doing. And they speak of this whole notion of creating psychological safety. We have to find safe spaces, and then we have to engage in these conversations and find new solutions in this whole aspect of if I'm pre-programmed, I'm going to do what I've done in the past, and I'm going to align based on what I've thought in the past. But as we have these new conversations, we'll need to wrap these resources around new solutions that we can all agree on are the best next practices to push us forward. So I think that's where the muscle and resource, and I'm grateful, as successful as Lexington's chamber has been, the board and Bob as staff has led us into this whole thing of Chamber 2025 and not looking to the past, but looking to the future and what the new ages of and groups coming on from the millennials and Gen X's and others, how will this thing change? How will diversity change it? What will we be doing 5-10 years from now? And I think that's where we've got to keep the successful model as chambers going, but at the same time, looking at that new S curve of what that new marketplace looks like, and keep this current, the use of lack of a better term, cash cow going, but to begin to invest in what that future looks like.
Molly?
I am chomping at the bit on this one, Bob, and so I I limited myself to two. If resources were no object, et cetera, I would solve the transportation issue permanently. If I could go to one more meeting about workforce development and not have to talk about the transportation challenge, I could die happy. Okay, so that's number one. And number two is I would pay staff to ensure that every student in the Cradle Through Career pipeline, probably starting in public education, had a navigator who helps them navigate the system and ultimately land on a pathway to success. And I think that that's really a missing key piece.
We got a question here in the chat room. Has there been any discussion in any of your communities, at least so far, about using some of the influx of federal stimulus money locally towards some of those great programs? Great question. And let's start with Molly.
Yeah, so we're having a lot of conversation about this, and I was this morning actually sitting in the mayor's office talking about some of the apprenticeship efforts and just trying to think through some of that. One of the things that we're considering is trying to figure out how, with resources flowing to so many different institutions, is there an opportunity to bring folks together for at least a collaborative conversation to understand how do we use these funds to put ourselves in a dramatically different place 5 years from now, and what are the investments related to workforce and education that could make that happen. And so that's the conversation that we are trying to engage in and begin now with partners.
April?
Yeah, I would second that, especially around the topic of apprenticeships. I know, the community college is definitely seeing an influx of funding that they're applying to that. The city and the county are looking to see how they can support with some of the funding. Even the school system, the District C initiative that I mentioned, we're kind of waiting. We need a partnership with the school systems, and can some of that money be used to pay the teachers in the summer to become coaches, that sort of thing. So the conversation is definitely happening, and it's just a matter of Molly's point about some of those collaborative meetings. It's really just a matter of capacity, and each of our own capacity to continue those collaborative conversations, do the follow-up of those collaborative conversations. It's a big lift, I think, for every community.
And Bob, if you don't mind, can I follow up just super quickly? Sorry, Daryl. I just, the thing I would add just onto what April said is I think that's it's a really important time for chambers specifically, and for intermediary organizations when resources are flowing to individual institutions. There's, I think getting people to think collaboratively in those moments is even more challenging, because everyone has a set of priorities that they want to tackle. And so getting people to slow down and think and look at the big picture is a role that an organization like a chamber can play, and quarterback and ensure that things that the community really needs can happen.
Very good point. Daryl?
Earlier, I don't know whether it was Molly or April, one of you mentioned collaborative impact or collective impact. And I think that those kinds of discussions need to take place in communities. I have heard of multiple groups in this region talking about stimulus dollars and economic development, but it does become down to a battle. For example, some wanted more toward an economic development purpose. Others I've heard are advocating for affordable housing, for example. And we have to have these great civic conversations and safe spaces to understand we all want the betterment, but at some point decisions will be made on where some of the money is spent, but it doesn't mean that this other initiative was not important. So I think we all need to get more savvy, and yeah, I won today, or we won today, and we went this way. Tomorrow we may win together, but we go this other way. How can we, as communities, get strategic in our conversations, but understand that any investment is a good investment toward pushing us forward?
And to that point, we just contracted with Ted Abernathy to come into our region and help us figure out how do we up our game collectively more, but using his expertise and his experiences around the country and pulling regions together. Because Daryl, you make a good point. In all three of our communities, we're very regional. We're not just centric to those city lines or county lines. We're very regionally centric. So we got to factor or keep all those things in mind. And I might just add, which is going to lead to my next question about communications and best tools and ways to do that. But we've been texting back and forth with our mayor. We're waiting for the federal rules to be kind of finalized before we have all these what if, wish lists coming out, to have that same conversation about how best can we use federal dollars from COVID for a variety of different initiatives, including many that have been talked about here today in our overall theme, workforce talent. So this question probably should have been brought up a little bit earlier. We've all talked about it as well, but the way to communicate with folks changes so much between the ages of our population, public versus private, sometimes how we interface, especially with our kids, our younger folks. What do you find are the best ways in which you're able to communicate your programs to connect it? You've all mentioned that you've actually had very good success with those individuals who participated in your programs and initiatives. Are you having to use different means than you did before? Are you having to up your game in ways? And with COVID-19, the world's changed. So, we're going to have the in-person and we're going to have the hybrid. So how is the way that you connect with all these different audiences? How best have you found to do that? And I would start with Daryl.
Well, one thing I want to bring up, and I hope that I can represent what I'm saying, I think we need boundary spanners. I remember years ago reading the book Tipping Point and talking about boundary spanners. You have to have folks around you that have credibility in various communities. I work at a utility, so I'm in the investor-owned world. So I'm engaged in the marketplace. I'm an economic developer. I'm a person of faith. I go to church in the inner city, so I can bridge lots of different coalitions and have respect in those coalitions. So I think we need to have folks around us that maybe don't think like us. Now, we used to say it was diversity in terms of race and that kind of thing, but we need people of diverse thought, and we need to have credibility with those individuals and to begin to communicate out. One of the best pieces of advice I have received when I was a workforce board chair, we had a one size fits all, one stop in our community. But it worked for some, but it didn't reach other audiences. Our business community hated it. How do you begin to have conversations and have people around the table, and you can communicate that without sounding like I hate your program? No, I don't hate your program. But if you want it to be effective, and if we're trying to transport people from the welfare system to the employment system, we have to have better tools. So we have to be better stewards, and we have to have people around us that think differently, and we can go and have good, quiet conversations and figure things out. And I want to pick up on one point I left out. I wish I had mentioned it earlier in terms of wish list. We've got to figure out the daycare challenge. I'm a YMCA board member, and our YMCA did lots of emergency child care for critical healthcare workers during the pandemic. But that's going to be absolutely critical as we get our economies re-engaged, is to figure out that daycare crisis. How can we get mothers and fathers a safe place for their kids so they can get back in our institutions?
April.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Daryl. It was on my list too, and I chose two, and that was the third one. But early childhood education and daycare, I think yeah, that's huge. And there's some recent articles that show just the number of, especially women, who are just dropping out in the pandemic right now because of that. I totally lost my train of thought.
What I was asking about was communications, just the different audiences.
Oh, that is, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're like me, April. I have so many things spinning through my head.
Yeah, that's been an interesting one. And I guess just piggyback on Daryl, I really appreciate the idea of boundary spanners, or not gatekeepers, but gateway, individuals that offer the, opening to different pockets and communities. We, with our inclusive hiring partners, that's something we're facing right now, in that, the chamber doesn't have a lot of trust in those under-resourced communities. And therefore, if we're coming to them to say, we want to help, they're not probably super interested until they hear it from a community leader or a trusted a member. So that's definitely something that we are exploring. The other thing, with the next AVL, that's college students, it's, very different. These people are plugged in, using computers, using phones, have multiple devices, and it's just too much. They're getting information overload, and how do I send them? So we're using Slack for that one. It's love-hate, I think. No one really loves it, but it's, I recommend it for some people because I can communicate to a large group of people and it doesn't flood the email. The other thing I would say about communication is we've brought in some new marketing partners. One, for example, he self-identifies as a millennial, and he's a Black man, and he's communications and marketing. And his approach to marketing certain programs is very different than, a white-led organization or, someone who's been kind of doing our marketing, for, years. So that has been super informative and instrumental, because we're learning from him about where certain messages need to go and how they need to be said. And so I think communication, Daryl, what you've said is, we can't, it's, this idea of one stop anything is just impossible, it's not relevant anymore.
Yep. Molly.
Sure. Just a couple of things that I would add. We've done some work to really identify what the different audience and stakeholder groups for our work are, and then identify and articulate what the key messages for each of those groups are. And those are the messages that we come back to time and time again. And one of the things that I have found is, with the employer community specifically, we have worked to ensure that we are not the only carriers of whatever message needs to be carried. Really, employer to employer communication, best practice sharing, whatever it may be, to hear from a peer is just, I think, so valuable. And so we've tried to create those opportunities through convening, but also just in our strategy around outreach and relationship building. And then the final thing is sort of to the point, I think, of what Daryl and April were speaking about when it comes to community-focused work, which again is, I think, another huge opportunity for communities in this space, is to figure out authentic community engagement and rebuilding trust and so on. We are really just beginning to structure and implement that work in a more robust way in Chattanooga. One of the things that we have done is try to look across our community and identify where natural authority lives in community and in neighborhood, and make sure that we are connected with and sharing information with those folks that it can help spread throughout the community. And those people may be surprising. They may be a barber or a retired woman or whoever it may be. But we've tried to identify those hubs and build trust relationships with them.
I know today we've talked all over the gamut, but again, it still goes right into the talent pipeline. It goes back into workforce. And what I've heard is how we have to connect with lots of different groups, entities, people, resources, and we have to be honest. And quite frankly, April, you hit me with this one. You got to be vulnerable, but vulnerability is honesty. And where your shortcomings are, we've got to figure out how to overcome them. There's not any one thing that we're going to do that's going to do. It's going to have to be more different tools used. We're going to have to connect in person, but we still have that hybrid that's going to face us, where we got to connect via digital. So, and all the topics we've had, all three, we're going to have in all three of these sessions. It's not just that, it's that as a part of a bigger picture of issues we've got to deal with. So I don't see any other questions here in the chat box, and I'm going to go back around and have each of you, if there's anything, kind of your final thought that you would like to share with our group. And then we're going to stay tuned for next week when we wrap this up, talking about the digital equity and economic mobility, which again, I think we're going to hear some very similar themes emerge out of that as well. So Daryl, any parting comments that you would like to make?
One parting comment from a workforce standpoint, some of our research with IQS showed that there are some growing segments like computers and healthcare, but we got into this whole notion that the growth of our income in our region is slowing. And I think Ted Abernathy hit us over the head subtly with that in a presentation. We suffer in Lexington from riches. We've got the most beautiful area like you guys do. So we've got that beautiful horse heritage. We've got farming. How do we engage greater prosperity, but within a constrained area? One of those areas of opportunity will be the Lexington Industrial Authority's couple hundred acres that it will acquire through a partnership deal with the University of Kentucky, and we'll get access to that either in January or June of next year. How do we maximize that land for increased prosperity in Lexington? And one of the most beautiful things nobody really talked about, that goes out in our Georgetown Road corridor, which is where there is a significant African-American historic presence there, and it's on a bus route, so we get to transportation. So it's a beautiful spot across the street from the Bluegrass Business Park that Commerce Lexington helped populate some years ago. So we have a great opportunity in Lexington to spur economic development, have some inclusion, and in a way that's transformative to the region because it's close to the interstate, it's close to minority populations. So we need to maximize on that opportunity to create opportunity for our workforce of all segments, and in particular, as we look toward diversity and we look toward keeping the best and brightest coming out of our colleges and universities.
Very good. Molly.
Sure. The first thing I would say is thank you all for having me, and thank you, Bob, for moderating, and Daryl and April for sharing about your work and being willing to share. And as Bob said, April, be vulnerable. I think that's really important. The thing that I'm left thinking about is I just think that these are really complex issues. Workforce development talent is really complex. And I think that as much as we can think of, I think that as the economy moves, as our demographic shift, et cetera, we've just got to be willing to think differently and acknowledge those strategies that don't have strong outcomes and walk boldly into something different, and know that the ultimate goal is to transform the system, and so that we're not having the same conversation, and that we don't have to wake up every day thinking about how to solve it. It's already solved. So I think that's where we're headed. And if we can keep our eye on the prize, then that's our best bet.
Very good point. April.
Hard to follow that, Molly. You're so well spoken, and I would just second that. I think, Daryl has said it as well, that there's no quick fix. It takes a collaborative effort. Anyone on the call that wants to reach out to continue the conversation or have other sidebar conversations, I know me and our team is really open to having those kind of think tanks, if you will. I know we don't have a ton of capacity, none of us do, but it really helps to hear from. So I really appreciate Daryl and Molly, you sharing. It really helps to hear what other regions are doing. We all have unique challenges. While they're all very similar challenges, it needs to be community based. But I appreciate the opportunity to share with y'all and for being able to listen. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say thank you to all three of you. I know there's preparation work. There's also years of experience that you put in that gets you where you're at today, and to be able to tackle in the way that you have and you are these tough issues. And so it's been my honor to talk with you and to have this conversation. And I hope those who have dialed in or those who will come, and this was recorded, so we'll have a chance to take a look at it and walk away more enlightened and refreshed as far as where we're at and where we're going. And again, I'll say it for the second time, I feel very honored to any time I get to work with Kit and Christy, the two CEOs of the two chambers here that we're talking with. They are seen as industry leaders. They're good thought provokers, and they get things done. And so anyway, congratulations for our three communities to come together and to be able to talk on these topics. So again, stay tuned for next week, next Wednesday, where we'll have the topic on digital equity and economic mobility. And I think April said it well, is if you all have more comments you want to make or dig a little bit deeper, please feel free to reach out to any of the three presenters today. Thank you all very much, and have a good day.